Greetings, I'm Mark Hunter with McPherson.Tech, and we're doing a technical booth training for the staff and volunteers at the McPherson First United Methodist Church that I think will apply to other churches as well. So let's get started. The original tech booth at the church was actually upstairs in the balcony, which made it kind of hard to get the sound balancing right. It is now much easier for our technical teams now that we moved the sound booth downstairs. In this new sound booth, it was originally set up for our slides and sound, but we've also added live streaming and camera control as technology progressed. We're going to go through and show you an overview of this now. The sound booth is divided into several sections. We begin with the section in the center that is for the slides, which we use PowerPoint and ProPresenter. We have a section for the soundboard, and then our final slot is for the live streaming. Now this includes not only the live streaming, but also the camera control and video control. There are sections that we have for lighting, but most of the lighting is set up before the service and not a lot of tweaking is done during it, but we do have some presets that we can change throughout the service very easily. In this series, we're going to be doing an introduction to all of these areas, beginning with the overall introduction that we're doing right now. Next, we're going to have a presentation on slides and the computers that are used for those. Then we're going to talk about the soundboard and a quick introduction to that, live streaming, and finally we're going to end up with camera and video switching. When you first arrive at church, it won't look like this. You're going to have to go through and first of all power everything up. In our system, we go through and behind we have a rack that you begin with. In this rack, there's a switch called audio power. Some churches are a little bit different, but you generally have a rack like this. This is actually a sequencer. It will turn things on in the proper order. Once you power this up, a lot of the system is on, but you still have to go back and deal with the lights. Off to the left is the couple of lighting panels. There are several in the booth. All of these you have to go through, and first the white panel right here is for the cross at the front. This panel is for the overhead lights, and by the soundboard is another panel which is for specific settings. These are the lights that we can change a lot of colors on. So we can actually program these lights to be any colors we want: red, white, and blue, pink, white, whatever we like, and we have presets set. Now if we're going to be changing things during the service, usually it's this panel right here that we will go through and have a couple of presets on. Now for very special occasions like the children's plays, we also have this additional lighting control board that we put on top. Right now you'll see it says blackout. If I take the blackout key off, then it will go through and actually possibly turn on any special lights that we've set up in the front as well. Now, once all of the lights are on, then we have to worry about going through and turning on the computers and the screens. Now, a lot of the screens are very small screens. We use this little device to do that. We also have to turn on the projector. We use a little control. We turn on all of these monitors, including this little one over here. Now the sound and a lot of the lights are actually controlled from the booth, but the main unit that processes them is up front. If you go through the side door here towards the front of the sanctuary, you'll find a rack. And that rack has a lot of the controls for the sound and the overhead lighting. If for some reason you ever have flashing lights, that is an occasional problem in the system, and you have to kind of do a reset. The entire system itself, the soundboard and everything, is all controlled through this module back here, these amplifiers, and then back behind, we actually have some lighting control. If you have flashing lights, you can go back. If you do this during the sermon, you're going to lose your audio, projector, everything. But before the services, that's why we try and take care of it. If you turn this switch off for about 30 seconds, turn it back on, that will reset the lights. It doesn't happen very often, especially since we take care of a recent problem, but that will avoid having those strobing lights during the service. At the church, we do have a praise team band that plays over by the keyboard. And if they ever have problems where they're not hearing themselves in their monitors, well, part of the problem may be that there's actually an amplifier there on the stage. If this button is not pushed to the top and it has the power on light, then they're not going to get anything in the monitors. So just turn that on, that'll take care of that problem. Another thing we have is we actually have a couple of screens. We have these two screens that the pastors use for going through and seeing what is actually being shown up on the screen behind them. There's a switch for this. It's actually in the piano stool. So you pull that out of the piano stool and you can use that to turn these monitors on. Another thing sometimes we check once we get everything up and going is right here is usually where the clicker is for the sermon. They've had some problems with the clicker, so once you get the PowerPoint up and rehearsal starts, then we go through and we kind of test the clicker to make sure it's going to be working for the service. Then we're all set. Everything is ready to go. Once all the computers on, the monitors are on, and you don't have any problems with lights, then you are set to go. We do have one additional thing in the booth that we're not going to cover in detail here, but there is a Facebook and YouTube monitoring system. This is actually a separate computer. When you boot it up, you can actually go through and bring up the Facebook and the YouTube channels. They're kind of in the history of the browser. This is not required. We can also check on our phones to see if the Facebook or YouTube is working, but this is a simple way that we can make sure that everything is working during the service. At the end of the service, there are a number of steps we have to go through as well. We usually go up and turn off the monitors, and while we're up there, go ahead and blow out some of the candles in the altar just to help out. But the main part is shutting down the sound booth. That's what we're going to cover now. One of the most important things is properly shutting down the soundboard. We're going to go into more details on the soundboard in a later session, but for right now, if you take a look at the soundboard, it'll show you how to go through and shut it down. Up in the corner section is the screen. And in the screen, there's basically kind of what we call the home button. If it doesn't currently show this power down feature, if you go through and press this very top button twice, then it will go through and make sure you return to the home screen with the power down selection. We then press the power down. Once we press power down, we click on the shutdown, and this actually shuts down the computer that runs the soundboard. After it says it is now safe, then we can go through and begin shutting down the power and everything else in the sound booth. The next step is actually shutting down all the computers and the monitors. We use the remotes just like we did to start with. We shut down the projector and we use the little clicker to shut off all those little screens. Once everything is shut down, then we can go over and in the audio power, we have the switch that we press to off. You can have to push your finger in there just to prevent you from automatically bumping it, but you turn that off and then we're set. Once you're off there, then you can begin turning off the lights as long as everybody's out. Again, it's just the same as before, except the opposite. We do go through and we bring the cross all the way down, turns the cross off. Turn off the overhead lights. There's actually a button marked off that goes through and turns off the special lights, and make sure that the blackout light is lit. Another thing that we have occasionally is sometimes when you're going through and seeing the screen up in the sanctuary, you'll notice some bright lights flashing up on that. And those are actually from what we call our serve center. In our serve center, if they have some of the window shades open, it does early in the morning sometimes go through and reflect up there. If you just go out there in the serve center, shut those shades, then you'll be able to see the pictures on the screen much clearer. And that is our tech booth overview introduction. We'd like to thank you very much for listening to this. And up next, we'll actually have a presentations on slides using our presentations on the computers.